Hey folks, I'm Creatorious Rex. We're back for another episode of The Twin this week in NFT news, and I have with me my co-host Skot Leach. Hey Scott.
Hey, how you doing?
Back from vacation.
Yep.
We had
Ready
a
for
great
action.
interview with an artist last week, Matthew Curry. So we
Mhm.
took a step away from The
Awesome.
Twin for a week and got a little art on the program, which was really great. But all that means
Good.
is there's not much more to talk about. I'll give
Yes.
people a quick rundown on what we're going to be talking about. I think that would be only fair. Market data, always a fan favorite. We're going to do that. We've got a lot of new data through the end of February, so it's really interesting things going on there. Ukraine has been in the news. It is the top news story, obviously, worldwide, but it's also been a really big mover of news in the NFT space, which I think a lot of the people probably have come across some of it, but you'd probably be surprised at how much is actually going on. I think we should talk about Metaverse. Is just one story on that today. Sandbox season 2 just kicked off. I think it was yesterday. I've been tooling around in there a little bit. We'll see what your thoughts are on it. I don't think you've been in there yet. You may be a little too busy.
Mhm.
And then brands and NFT lands. Oh, geez, a lot of new stuff coming out. It wasn't able to even get it all in. We might have one more thing at the end, but let's just stick with that. All right. So, any comments before we get started, my friend?
Now I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
All right, cool. All right, number one. People like to look at this. We have data here from Richard Chen. He puts that up in Dune Analytics. That's really helpful to us. It's been very consistent over time. I think it's one of the better gauges of what's out there. There's some other data sets out there that I think are skewed. Um, so this is just OpenSea. But OpenSea is 60 to 70% of all NFT traffic based on our analysis. It used to be higher, it used to be over 80%, but it's still a lot. And so it is the broadest base. I think it gives you the best sense of what's going on. It's because it has everything. It has the PFPs, has all the collectibles, has the fine art, a lot of different things. Okay, so what you're looking at here is US dollar volume on Ethereum, and what just to orient you here a little bit, the all the way to the right, that little bar, that's March. Just ignore that because that's only like 2 days of March. What we really want to look at is the other days. So the first big bar there is August. And then you see you go down September, October, November, the height of the NFT recession. December pops back up, basically the same as October. And then we have January. And January was a blockbuster, which we already talked about. But then we had February over there to the right. That's the tall bar to the right. What do we see about February? Certainly, it is the second most volume, US dollar volume on OpenSea ever. So that beat out August, which is pretty significant unto itself. As it turns out, that was about, let's see, $3.6 billion in total sales. Definitely considerably less than the $5 billion in January, but over the $3.4 billion from August. And one of the interesting things is we talked about this 2 weeks ago. We looked at the February 15th numbers. If it had done straight line through the end of the month, so the same rate the first 2 weeks as the second 2 weeks, it would have been over $4 billion. But it's not. So we had a significant pullback in the second half of the month. One other thing that people should know if you're really into data, February only has 28 days. January and August have 31. So the February numbers would have been a little bit higher, probably, or certainly more than 100 million higher, I think, based on where we are right now. But it still would have been well shy of 4 billion. Okay, Scott, you've got the data, got the story. What do you think?
Yeah, I short month, but like you said, I still don't think that it would have been as high as January. Obviously, it feels to me like the Ukraine stuff played into this a little bit. That's what my gut tells me. When that began, I know crypto took a dip, and then ETH across the board, Bitcoin, ETH, and then pretty much everything follows that, right? And then I want to say maybe 2 or 3 days ago, it started turning around, and then a lot of coins were doing well. And historically, from my observation, it seems like when the coins get a little bit volatile, NFT activity tends to slow a little bit. That's an observation I made. I don't have data at nearby to back that up, but that seems to be what I've observed. So I wonder if that's playing a factor.
I
Yeah.
like the volatility observation. I haven't looked at that. I mean, certainly we looked at data, when was it, a month ago, where it showed that NFTs, spending on NFTs, or I'm sorry, pricing of NFTs pretty closely matched Ethereum over the past 9 months. Somewhere it synced up last spring at some point. And so, because we'd always thought, hey, maybe there's this disparity and there's arbitrage. Well, maybe the pricing's a little sticky
Mhm.
when there's fluctuations in ETH because it goes up and down a lot. But not that much. We see that it actually adjusts pretty quickly. But really good point. Volatility, and particularly across a number of different coins,
Mhm.
might be another thing to look at. So I don't really have a perspective on that, but it's something we should look at.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, speaking personally, like when you hear all the global stuff going on creates some FUD, and I think that people get a little bit um, itchy. To me, it feels like NFTs is where I go when I'm. It's like a layer deeper for me personally. So I'm not even thinking about the price of ETH when I'm looking at NFTs. I'm just looking at NFTs. But then when things start to get a little sketchy, I start looking. Okay, what are coins at? And then I look at, am I diversified correctly? Do I have all my coins in the right places? That kind of stuff comes to mind. So it's not even that I'm less bullish or something on NFTs. I'm just focused elsewhere. But that's me, one person out of a lot. So
No, it's an
probably doesn't
interesting
have.
point. Okay, so second data point we want to bring in. Now, this is going to be a different chart. We were just looking at US dollar count, US dollar value. Now we're talking about the count of NFTs sold on OpenSea. And you
Mhm.
can see over there on the left, the first big spike there is August. And then, discard the small bar all the way to the right. That's March. But you see the big peak in January. So not only did we have higher prices that month, but we actually also had more volume in terms of total NFTs sold, like individual NFTs. February blew away August and September. So that was surprising to me because when we were looking at the numbers, it looked like the second half of the month was going to be a little soft, and it was from a pricing standpoint, but it was not as much from a unit volume standpoint. Apparently, people were picking up a lot of low price NFTs.
Hmm. Yeah, it seemed like there's. I mean, we went through that period, right, in the summer where there was, for a little while early on, there wasn't hardly any projects, and then there was a big wave of projects, and then it seemed like there was a little bit of fatigue around some of the PFP things, and then it started up again, and then we started seeing a bunch more projects again, and I feel like that was true in February and January both. Just way more projects launching, and hard to get on to those, hard to even mint some of that stuff because there was so many, like, it's the big thing I hear now, like everyone's complaining about how hard it is to get on a whitelist and how much effort it is. um
I know it's terrible
yeah
trying to get on
it,
Pixelmon.
yeah, I think I'm guessing
It's so
that some
funny.
of the
I can't even believe I didn't put Pixelmon on the agenda for today. We have to give that some attention at some point. But
yeah.
all hail Kevin. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, we're entering the meme phase of NFTs. Not
Entering?
that they
Haven't we
weren't
been
before.
there?
I mean, we were always there, but now that it's memes on, and yeah, I don't know. It just seems like we hit another gear or something. Um,
Well, those Kevin NFTs, by
yeah,
the way, are trading for like 6 or 7 ETH. I was looking at, and like everything else is like zero. But the Kevins, all of a
yeah,
sudden, there's not that many of them. Are really popular. And there's Kevin Punks. I don't know if you
yeah.
saw that.
I've been seeing a lot of sort of derivatives around that all over the place. Yeah,
We'll come back to it. We'll come back
yeah,
to Pixelmon
yeah.
another day. Okay, other
This feels
comments on
right to me, and we know more people are getting in. Right, it's hard to get into this and then justify, even if you have the means to justify buying, an ape or even a world, spending more than a couple ETH on an NFT, if you're just entering the space, is I think it takes a while to get comfortable to do that, even if you have the means to do it. Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow, I think, the first time. So yeah, I don't know. A
Yeah,
couple
absolutely.
possible reasons there. Who knows?
Okay, but still, I mean, there's a lot of action. I mean, I think
It's good. Yeah.
that's interesting to me. Okay, so then we have active traders on the platform. So look at those two large ones. So there were almost as many people who did some sort of trade on OpenSea in February as January. Which is surprising because obviously there was far less. It was $1.5 billion less, basically, was spent in terms of U.S. dollar
Yeah.
value.
Yeah. I mean, this is good to me. People are doing
Yes,
stuff.
they're engaged. I mean,
Yeah,
that
they're
someone at
engaged, and
least the miners are getting some money. I don't know if anyone
yes.
else is making money, but it's good news for miners.
Yeah.
All right, here's the big one. Okay, so what we showed a few weeks ago is we talked about this idea that August, January, and the first half of February all had basically $2,000 average NFT prices. So let's think about what this means on OpenSea. So some things mint initially on OpenSea, a lot of things mint elsewhere, like for example, on the website of the project, and then it's only secondary in there. You look at it, we don't really know the median. That's something I would be really interested in. I'm trying to figure out a way to figure that out. But okay, so we'll work with averages because that's what we have. Still useful for us to look at that. And what we found was that that $2,000 per NFT was sort of coming through. That's because some things are selling for 100 ETH and some things are selling for 0.05 ETH, and it all averages out. And I think that's sort of an interesting thing. August was a nice peak. November was, think about November. That was the lowest in terms of total dollar value, the lowest in terms of the total traders that month, compared to the last 6 months. So the people who were active were the ones who were spending more money. Very interesting. Okay. So then we get into January, sort of right in
Also,
that.
real quick, November was when ETH was at its all-time high too, right? So there was a lot of coin volatility happening at that time. I think that's accurate.
Um,
I can check.
It was
real quick
over
here.
4,000. So probably. Yeah, I think it was. I think it did hit the all-time high then. And that probably might have impacted it because, again, that stickiness, there might have been some people buying some things. Also, yeah, and then if people feel ETH wealthy, they might have been dropping, more likely to buy higher priced items. That would make sense.
Yeah, or sitting to wait to see what happens, right? It seemed like there was a lag before where NFTs weren't keeping up with this is what I felt was like you'd see ETH fluctuate pretty quick and the NFT would still be priced the same. And then it seemed to go where like everyone would kind of pause or wait to see what was going to happen with the coin because it was going so nuts. But it was November 3rd, I think, or November 11th, I think, when it was at its all-time high, almost 4,800.
Yeah.
But in October, it had gotten down below, or it was like September, early October, it was below 3,000 at one point. So that's a pretty big jump, right, in that period of time. So I do wonder if that had something to do with who knows. Anyway,
Yeah,
speculation.
absolutely might have been. And so let's look at February over on the right. So the average was 1669 price per NFT. Again, that includes the high price ones plus the low price ones. It's just an average. But interestingly enough, when we talked about this through the 15th of the month, the average was 2029, almost identical to what it had been the previous month, almost identical to what we'd seen in August. That 2000 was sort of this magic number. But I put this other number in here because you can do the math and you find out that in the second half of the month, the average was 1243. So it's not just that 1669 is out and that's lower, but we saw it cratered in the last 2 weeks of the month.
Interesting. But they're still buying a lot of them. So, or some other project came along and people bought a bunch of cheap
Yeah,
NFTs,
there's like, well, and
cheap
Pixelmon came out.
$1,000 NFTs.
Pixelmon
Yeah.
was only to mint. You could mint for 3 ETH. No, but that wasn't minted on OpenSea. Or you could trade secondary on OpenSea. But no, I think yes, that's exactly what happened. There was a lot of lower price ones, and probably the other thing that happened was there might have been lower transaction volume for the high priced NFTs.
Yeah, that seems. Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah. And one of the things that I would suggest that people look at is ETH struggled last few weeks. We saw a lot of collections come off of all-time highs and start to retreat a little bit. And when that happens, I have a feeling this is going to be like real estate, that housing prices collapse faster than homeowners are willing to reduce the price. And so you find this price stickiness that doesn't really match the market, and it generally takes a while. So housing changes in terms of declines always lag the market. They're much closer in terms of increases. In part because a buyer can always bid more than what the market rate is, right? If they really want a product, but you can't sell a property unless the seller will come down to a price, which is a market price. And I wonder if some people who maybe have some of these higher price collections saw the prices coming down and said, geez, like I don't really want to sell for 3 ETH or 5 ETH less than it was a week ago. That doesn't seem right to me. Maybe I'll just hold for a while. I'm sure it'll come back, just like that wishful thinking.
Actually, you know what else too? I totally forgot, but there was that delisting thing that happened, right? OpenSea, what day was that? Was that on the 15th they did that? Or was it on
I think
the
it was 20 something, 21st maybe.
Okay.
It was or 19th. I don't know. It was after the 15th.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
Oh, maybe because there were some things that maybe there was less inventory available for sale because some people didn't, when they're delisted, they didn't come back in and put them for sale. That's possible because the people will look and they're going to look first at things that are available to buy as opposed to putting a bid on something that's not on the market at the moment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was that was really the focus.
I also do wonder. It's just like I don't think they're eating any of. I don't think LooksRare is making a big dent in OpenSea's business necessarily, but the fact that they're offering incentives for selling high-priced items, some folks might be listing over there only to try and get.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I've definitely sold a couple things on LooksRare just because the way that the bid works is just more efficient. You just like you get better bids. And I've listed 1 or 2 things over there as well. So maybe that did, most of LooksRare volume cratered because they had that incentive basically for the first 4 weeks and around a couple of high price projects. But it still might be material from an OpenSea standpoint. That's a really good point. All right. Let's look at another piece of data I thought was interesting. This is Google Trends data. Anyone who's looked at Google Trends will recognize this. And we're just looking at searches by NFT and Metaverse. So I thought there were 2 interesting things associated with this. So first, you can look at the peak for NFTs was the week of January 16th to the 22nd. So there are a lot of people who are like, what's this NFT stuff? Or maybe they know NFTs, but they just want to get the news or something like that. There's a significant disparity between people looking at NFTs versus the metaverse. I think that's the first thing that should put out there. I don't think that anybody, maybe even a year ago, would have thought that would be the case. This is 2 years worth of data, by the way, up through this week. So, Metaverse, you can see it's somewhat obscured by that little table there, but its peak came in October, the week that Facebook renamed itself Meta and started talking about its own Metaverse, the Horizons scenario. But so that's one thing, we've peaked, but look at after the peak, January 16th, mid-January, it's cratered. People are not searching for it. Okay, so does that mean They search for it. Now they know what it is. So they don't need to search for it. Or is it less interest? It seems to correspond with a decline in prices, decline in volume. Although it's not exactly right, because for the 2 weeks after that, for almost the 4 weeks after the 16th, it was really robust in terms of pricing and volume, and it's really been the last 2 weeks. So it's not exactly a harbinger for what's going on in the market, but it's interesting. There's like less interest at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hard to know why. I think all those ideas of why this happened could be. There is I think we are going to experience a thing where whatever that is, where you have to hear about something a bunch before you actually do it, and go through all those phases of like, I'm thinking of like grief or something, or like denial and all these, but there is that whole process, right? Before you actually get into it, you have to kind of go through this thing of like, what is this? Oh, that sounds crazy. Oh, I should get in on this. Yeah,
absolutely. So
I'm also really curious what the engagement factor is on this stuff. Like once you actually go through the steps, as a product manager, this was something that like you get really good at this. Like what's the thing that makes people come back to your product? And engagement is like one of the best ways. Retention, right? So like when I worked at eBay, we found that like at one point it was saved searches. If someone had created a saved search on their eBay mobile app, they were going to stick around. So then that, from a product perspective, that got you to the point where like, okay, how do we get people to save a search more quickly and let them know how to do that? It feels to me like a lot of folks I talk to that get into NFTs, some get burned and just never look back. But
right.
A lot of people, once they get in, it seems to be pretty sticky and they get retained well. Like they stick around in it. Everything's been, even with the ups and downs, it's all been pretty good. So that could be why it could completely change if everything goes to hell. But yeah, I wonder about retention of folks who finally get a wallet and transact on OpenSea. Like how often do they come back? What are they doing? All that kind of stuff.
I mean, it would be something to look at right now. It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
In terms of the number of people who are engaging. But
yeah, I
to
mean,
me,
even that data point
Q2
we
is gonna
saw
tell.
where it say again.
Q2 is going to tell the story.
Yeah.
Because it seems like we're going to go through a more prolonged period of not hotness.
I think there's going to be that. And I think we're still in this weird growth phase, right? Of like, oh, it's a new project. You have new people coming on that experience the excitement of minting something new and see the fluctuation and the volatility and all that kind of stuff that makes it, and being a part of a community. And then you have people that have been around for a little bit longer that are looking for more. They sort of know what they look for when they choose what project they're going to get into. And I think we're going to see more of that utility. Someone had a great tweet about like utility is not, I'll try and find it so we can put it in the notes, but if something like utility is not a party on a roadmap in 2 years, like that doesn't count as utility. You got to actually go a little bit deeper. And I think that folks are starting to recognize that might actually mean something. And that's really the power of all this stuff, right? The ability to, the smart contracts attached to these things are what enable lots of really cool stuff that we haven't seen much of yet. And I think that's going to be what makes a lot of projects successful for the remainder of the year, especially the second half of this year. I think we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I think that wraps it for data, unless you had another comment that you wanted to throw in there.
No, that's good.
Okay.
I'll stop talking about it.
So like the market collapsed. No, it hasn't quite collapsed. But we had actually a really strong February. It'll be really interesting to see in a couple of weeks what March looks like. It seems like it's going to be soft, but things could come back. Okay, so let's see. I think I've got the next thing. Well, I did actually want to talk about Ukraine next. I don't know if I have any pictures from Ukraine. I think I don't have any pictures for Ukraine, so we'll just talk about it. So the first story is Pussy Riot. They raised $6.7 million. UkraineDAO ran that. So I've got some stats here. 3,200 items sold. Let's see. 2,200 Ether in 72 hours. And they had contributions ranging from about 3 cents US dollar value to 128,000. And they're basically, what they have is it's like it's a giant picture, and they're going to, based on the percentage of the dollar value, you're going to get a fractional ownership of whatever that is. And that might, UkraineDAO will own that, and then maybe they'll sell that at some point. It's not clear. But I thought that was really interesting. We had CryptoPunk. CryptoPunk 5364 was also donated to Ukraine's wallet on Tuesday, and these aren't the only ones. There was a couple other ones.
Sure.
A couple of folks who are like really prominent in the NFT community had raised like $1 million in an evening. It's GoFundMe.
Yeah, at a whole nother level, right? There's so much fascinating stuff about this that's hard, like picking it apart. I could go nuts about any of it, but the fact that this is what's awesome about decentralized, all of it, right? You can send currency to someone without an institution instantly, without and you can gather awareness around it. And now that's both, we'll get into I know it's going to get into some tricky questions here, but this couldn't have happened if it wasn't for crypto, right? Yeah, me too. I don't think this would have happened if it wasn't for crypto, like an NFTs or any of this stuff. And part of it is maybe, those could just be speculators that want Pussy Riot's NFT. They might not, some of those folks may not care at all about what's going on in Ukraine, but they know that there's an opportunity here, or they're Pussy Riot fans, or they just want to try and make some cash.
That was a special one. I mean, they set up the UkraineDAO. Pussy Riot, they're Russian, I think, or Russian heritage. I think they're from Russia. So in any event, so there's something interesting there where they were like, they're critics of Putin and, from Russia. So I think that's interesting. There are several other people who did things that were just, we're doing an NFT to raise money for Ukraine, and so there wasn't any reason for them to do that other than they want to support. I am wondering how many people actually got their first crypto wallet just to contribute or to participate in one of these. I bet
that would be interesting to see. That would be interesting. Yeah,
there's got to be a number of folks that have done that, and then I think this is also really interesting because the heels of a controversial GoFundMe situation with the Canadian truckers, where GoFundMe being obviously the best known platform in the space, decided, I think after being contacted by the Canadian government, that they were going to shut that down and not give any money to that. And this is the thing that a lot of people said, wait a second, are you kidding me? And then they actually also sent the personal identifying information of all the people who contributed to that to the Canadian government. I saw Jason Calacanis even on his podcast This Week in Startups. He said, I had to take another look at crypto. I had some crypto, but I just got a lot more. This is really interesting to me that these platforms that we have and the governments can just go to bank accounts and all these things and shut them down. Maybe we need more crypto. And now we see something like Ukraine. This is basically a GoFundMe, which is now like not a brand name, but like a concept, right? Fundraising. And it's decentralized. So like the Russian government can't shut it down.
Yes. On the flip side, they can do the same thing. So sanctions are tricky and I know that's a whole other thing that's happening where the NATO, US is going after is trying to get sanctions on trying to block activity from Russia around some exchanges. And
Yeah, well, that's a function of some of the exchanges are actually centralized, right? So you go
exactly.
after
Yeah.
the
So
centralized node.
if you go to Coinbase or someplace where you don't actually, um, yeah, it is interesting to see how there is something very democratic about that. This, even though you still have the whale scenario where someone could come in and influence everything, but the fact that lots of individuals can contribute to something in a way that they just couldn't do previously is hugely powerful. Um,
I mean, have we ever seen
Insanely powerful.
a crowdsourced war effort? I mean, we have. It was called war bonds.
Mhm.
So these things are not like, but I mean, it's just strange, right? Like it's people all over the world are then saying, we like this side. I don't believe there's a comparable effort on the other side of this conflict. So really fascinating to me this is happening. And UK Ukrainian government, they've received, I believe, 47, almost 50 million in crypto since the beginning of the war. That was as of yesterday, I think it was. They're about to sell NFTs. They were talking about doing a coin drop, but they pulled back from that. I have a feeling the IMF doesn't want them to do a coin drop, and they're trying to
Yeah,
get IMF loan guarantees.
sure.
But they're going to do their own NFTs to like directly raise money. I think this is really fascinating. It strikes me too. First of all, this is an existential threat to GoFundMe
Mhm.
because they pissed a lot of people off. There were even people who agreed with or were not in
Yeah.
favor of the movement who were like, "Wait a second, this is overstepping."
Yep.
Particularly the
Yep.
way they did that, and I just wonder if like, why would you do that? Why don't you just set up a wallet? And the only reason to not do this from a cryptocurrency standpoint is there's still a very small percentage of the population that has crypto wallets. So you're not reaching everybody. But we've seen that they are, when they're motivated, they're people with means and they will give a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know what it this is very hard to articulate if you're not doing this stuff on a daily basis, but as many barriers to entry as there are to all of this stuff, and for how clumsy a lot of the UX and UI is, once you understand it, it is very, very easy
It's
to
so
move
correct.
stuff around. Yeah,
So
and
correct.
you not only that, you get for me, you get into a mindset where you don't think of it in the same way. I don't I don't wanna say it's like chips at a casino, but I think of it more as I don't know, I think about my crypto as a kind of investable. Where is it sitting? What am I doing with it? I'm fairly risk tolerant, but I move it around a lot to make it work for me, right? And because I'm used to doing that, I'm not the barrier to entry for me to just if I believe in a cause to just send coin to it is I can do that instantly. I don't gotta like log into a site. I don't gotta create a username and password. I don't gotta explain anything. I can just do it. Yeah, it's a big, big deal, and it's gonna affect everything. Um,
Yeah. That's a really good point. We do talk about the friction all the time, but once you understand how to do it, I do think some of the wallets is going to get a lot easier to deal with. But once you do it, I
mhm,
just paid an invoice using it's someone I'd paid before. I
mhm,
mean, I just opened up the wallet and to send eat like the
yeah,
right amount. This was USDC. Like, how much do I want to send? They were
yeah,
they were top of my list. I just clicked on it and it's gone. Like I didn't have to think
yep,
about it. And I have a record because I can go to Etherscan, I can just download the record so I can
yep,
look at it. I didn't have to like go log in, like how often do you go to a place and like, oh, thing or there's or you have to wait for the SMS to come in for the two-factor authentication, all these other things, and then go through 3 screens before you can pay somebody and all these clicks, literally 15
yeah,
seconds. And then maybe however long it take to clear, but once I hit send, I know it's going to go through.
yeah, yeah, and the thing I'm waiting for is when some high ticket physical goods start letting me connect my wallet. This token frame back here,
Mhm.
part of the reason I bought that is because they accepted ETH. It's like, oh, I look at, looking at the price, like that tiny little barrier was like, oh, I could just do this right now. This is easy. Okay, I'll just do it.
Would you,
Um,
okay, so how much does
so imagine
how,
if I could go to Tesla's site and it says connect your wallet and says, hey, 20
right?
ETH for this car.
And you might pay
That
more than you would in USD.
possibly, but I also might, it's just easier. It's super easy. And because I'm thinking in ETH now, and who knows what other incentives they could give me to buy that? Like, hey, if you stake with us, instead of paying 20 ETH now, stake 10 ETH, and in 6 months we'll give you your car. Like, is there some other mechanism where you can like,
That's clever.
there's all sorts of ways that companies could start taking advantage of this, and all this ETH is floating. I mean, people are buying crazy Kevins for,
Yes.
that could be stuff that people, not to say that every, like a car's, we're talking about, I think luxury items would work well, but it's still like there's something there.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump to, let's do brands and NFT lands. We'll move on. All right, the first one I want to bring up, Wrangler. I'd missed this one. It was a couple weeks ago. They had the drop in February, and look at what you get though. You get the digitally animated NFT, and that's the Mr. Wrangler icon, which is actually kind of cool. If we're not going to show it here, but it is cool to watch. You get a VIP pass to a private event in New York Fashion Week. Interesting. A Decentraland Metaverse wearable, and in real life access to the unveiling of the legendary NFT, which I'm not really sure what that is, but this is really clever. And they did this with in conjunction with, I think it was Leon Bridges, who's like a spokesperson for them or something like that, the soul singer. So I thought this was good. I haven't always liked all the things that the brands have been doing. I think there've been a lot of steps, but this one strikes me as like, it's from a brand that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity here for some of these brands that are, it's not Nike, right? But there's an opportunity to hop on this and roll the dice and see what happens. And I think, again, we've said it before, but if they're thoughtful about this and really thinking about who it's for and what it's going to do, I think it works, whether it's like a collector that's just into their brand or whether there actually is utility that's compelling. All the fashion stuff and Decentraland and all that, that's still like a wait and see to me, because I've yet to see people actually spend time in the metaverse as of yet. I think that will change eventually, but I'm really curious to see how that stuff all plays out. But yeah, I think in a way, I think it's funny that some of the brands are putting more thought into the utility than some of these projects that are coming out that are, by supposedly crypto native folks.
Well, you know why? I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, they're being run by marketing departments.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah,
I'm sort of sick of the next, staking, coin drop, DeFi gamification mechanism for NFT projects. I mean, like, I understand that works, and that's the thing that works probably best right now. But yeah, I mean, this is like a cool marketing campaign. Basically, they got a bunch of free media coverage. They only sold 75 of them, so there's an exclusivity there. These can be, they can use these tokens forever as some special ownership item to give people additional access and that type of thing. And I think it's a really clever way to get involved, put a stake down. I'm in the NFT space, but not risk having something out there that you're going to be regretting 2 years from now.
Yeah, I like the approach of a small number of NFTs that carry significant utility or long-term benefit. I think that that's really cool. And I think that it's really strategic for a lot of brands because, so back in the band 9 Inch Nails back in like 2008 released this Ghost album, a bunch of instrumental albums, tons and tons of songs, and you could download them for free, or you could order the CDs for a certain amount of price that was still decent. But if you just want to listen to it, you go download it for free. But then they did this box set for like collectors that was like crazy expensive, but in a nice wood case with vinyl. And it's smart, right? Because they knew we have fans, then we have like pretty hardcore fans, and then we've got these super, super fans that want this. This kind of NFTs remind me of that. Like there's the ability for brands or for whoever to really offer something up to the hardest of the hardcore of their fan base. Yeah, there's something there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find this. Oh yeah. I wonder what this sells for. Probably a lot. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, this idea of creating collectibles, like absolutely. And I think actually, and I'm not like a Wrangler guy. I've never really been. I've known about the brand. I probably have owned Wrangler jeans at some point in my life, but I don't really think about that brand much. But I was actually there's only 75 of these. Maybe I would use that as my apparel in Decentraland, right? Because there's two things that are good about that. One is it's somewhat rare, they associated with something really interestingly, which is Fashion Week. And third, if I did run across anyone else, boy, there'd be like an instant bond.
Yeah, that's something that I think we're going to see a lot of, especially now as COVID seems to be winding down. Hopefully we'll continue to do so. When we start to go out in the world and see people wear, whether it's ape sweatshirts or Wranglers or whatever special item they got as the result of an NFT, yeah, that instant, it's like the ape follow ape thing on Twitter, right? You're sort of like in a club without being, even if you don't know those people, you had some kind of shared experience, or like almost like it used to be LinkedIn, right? Oh, I have all these LinkedIn connections. I've seen this on some of the VFriends groups, like the Hangout Hawks band together. And if you need help with something, or if you're looking for a job or looking for a marketing person for your company, whatever it is, like you now have this circle of folks who you can go to. Those little communities are super powerful. It's going to be really interesting to see how that continues. I think that's something that we underestimate a lot. And I think it's why the PFP projects have been successful to some degree, is that camaraderie around rallying around these projects.
People like to affiliate. There's no question about it. Okay, so we have this other one, this Champion Wear. People will be familiar with that brand probably. They did a project with Tafi. Tafi is a digital avatar company, making things for the metaverse. So they're doing this code. I thought this was interesting because a lot of apparel companies, Nike, Adidas, which have broader product lines, but they're getting into the end. And I thought it was really interesting for them to come in with an avatar company. It's just a different on ramp.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think it's pretty clever in this case. Some of these lo-fi repetition works in artwork, right? Like I think we talked about this before, but the artists that are really successful, a lot of times you see the repetition of an image and it.
Yeah.
So this thing, I think it's the Kevin thing we were talking about earlier. It's like that too now, that you're going to see that and never be able to unassociate it with that. So this is a cool, I think it's a clever approach.
Yeah. I think that Champion logo is like, could stand out too. And have the cultural cachet as some of the other brands we talk about usually. So, maybe that's a theme here.
There is this whole underdog thing going on, right? Like even in, we saw it with not even crypto related, but we saw it with the GameStop and that whole thing. and AMC
Yes.
now, these people rallying around these kind of underdog companies. And now whether it started because of possible economic benefit, whatever the original inciting incident, or the intent for why they got into it, but now there seems to be, I've observed a little bit of like, oh yeah, okay, this is like an old school brand, like
Yeah.
they're allowed,
Well, it's like Chuck
good for
Taylor,
them, they're an
right?
underdog. Yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly.
Converse, different kind of, that was out of favor. They were number one. People don't know this, but when I
Mhm.
was a child, Converse, it's like nobody knew what it was. And then starting with the 80s, really with Michael Jordan and then Bo Jackson, just like, and so then no one knew Converse, but then Converse came back because Chuck Taylor's are this old
Mhm.
shoe type, and then they came in all these different colors,
Mhm.
and New Balance at one point had its heyday. People just sort of resurrected these brands, and they're like, oh, because
Yeah.
it's niche. Yeah, so I could see how, like, does everyone want to wear Nike and Adidas in the metaverse? I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Maybe Champion or somebody else will have a shot at that.
Yeah.
Okay, do you know what this is?
Is this the Michael Jordan project?
It is. Yep. The 6 rings. So the bull. So he just did a drop. I don't have a lot of detail on it at the moment, but I thought it was really interesting. Or the drop's coming up. He did a mark. Basically, they call it an engagement platform, but it's like a marketplace on Solana. And it's called the HEIR, like an HEIR, HEIR,
Mhm. Mhm.
as opposed to it's Air
Yeah.
Jordan, like
Yeah.
progeny, as opposed
Yeah.
to Air Jordan flying through the air.
Yeah.
So I thought it was
Yeah.
really, I think this is really clever, but like a couple of things I was interested. He's obviously a giant brand. He's doing this separately from Nike, which he's done a lot of his things with over the years. Uh, it's on Solana, and and the platform is designed to help athletes. So, like, break that down. I mean, we've got an application, we've got a market segment of which Michael Jordan would have great reach. I would think would be pretty, and he selected Solana.
Yeah, I'm seeing this a lot. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Solana because the seems like lots of projects are getting on there because of the speed stuff. Yeah.
Okay, well, more brands and NFT. See what we have here. Oh, we've got a couple of trademark protections. Wingstop and CVS,
Mhm.
uh, both trademarks for metaverse. So let's talk about
Mhm.
this. So Wingstop, like food, but they have apparel. So that's it's a popular brand. I guess we saw it's a little bit different than the what was the chicken cone that we
Yeah.
talked about a couple of
Yeah.
weeks, where they were selling basically future revenue flows of franchises, which I thought
Yeah.
was actually,
Yes.
this is just trademark protection because they have intent there.
Sure.
And CVS
Sure.
though, yes, like CVS in the metaverse. Like, why would you have CVS in the metaverse? They have this whole
So you
list
get
of
a
things: prescription drug, wellness, beauty, personal care products for virtual worlds. What?
really long receipts, virtual receipts when
Yeah.
you leave. Um, yeah, it all this stuff reminds me of Back to the Future too. When he goes into the future, like it's like the our representation of what the future was when that movie was made. For some
Right.
reason, like I picture the metaverse with just Wingstops and CVS's all over the place. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
I-
there's probably someone there that's like, we got to do this, and so they trademarked it.
yeah,
But
they might not do anything. I mean, they're just they're filing trademark protection with, uh, that gives them the option to do some things, but it's pretty specific of what they think they might be doing. We'll see if they follow through with it. It's smart. I mean, this is almost like grabbing a like this. Just give yourself the option. They don't want anyone trying to hijack the CVS brand in the metaverse space, and people then coming back to the retail. You're a retailer in the real world. You're not in the metaverse. Like, there's no conflict here. Now they can say, yes, we've expressed intent.
Yeah.
So Southwestern University, they're a Texas university. He did a deal with Legacy League, which is a new marketplace, and they basically allow you to create custom marketplaces. They expect to be selling actually later this month, I think, as early as later this month. But it's just they were very clear to say and all the things that you like as a Southwestern University fan, but we're also going to allow you to do things for the metaverse.
Yeah. After just bagging on CVS, I could see a point in the future where, like, if I could fill a prescription or if there was a DoorDash like functionality that exists in the metaverse, some of these things might actually be relevant.
Okay, so for commerce, yeah, it's like, but like, so there'd be a CVS storefront. You could walk in there. I don't know why you would want to do that,
but it might not even. I think we keep assuming that everything's going to be like a 3D environment, but it might be like on a HUD somewhere. There's a point, or at one point, Xbox, I remember, did a deal with Pizza Hut or someone where you could order a pizza while you were playing Xbox. And it struck me as like just genius. Like, I'm in the thing.
Yes.
My wallet's already connected. I can just press a button and order a pizza. Like, this is brilliant.
It was with Domino's, right?
Yes, I think that was right. Yeah. I think that might make sense in some of these things. So we keep thinking of it as and I just don't know, but we think of the metaverse as this 3D environment we're going to walk around in, but it could be that there's other layers of HUD or voice interaction where you could just say, hey, I want Wingstop while I'm here.
I just had a conversation last night with one of the people who was basically game designer at the company that created Dungeons and Dragons. This was like 30 years ago, and he's been involved. He's spent ahead a 30-year career. Now he's just a professional artist, but he had a 30-year career as a game designer. So we were talking about metaverse spaces because he's created some in the past, like 20 years ago. He's creating a metaverse place. He said, but the processing power just wasn't good enough, and But the other thing he said, like, there are all sorts of problems. Like, everybody thinks they know what it is. And, we can talk about, we're going to talk about one in just a moment. Everyone sort of does it that way. And he said, there's a lot of problems with that. Is there a way that you could do it without only having that? Are there other UI affordances that you could put in?
Yes.
That would make it a more versatile space and wouldn't leave us with these flat Web 1 areas. So one of the things that I'm frustrated about with like the Niftorian project is my best marketing asset for that is a Web 1 interface. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous that's what I'm stuck on. I can use that, and I can use a little bit of Web 2 stuff, maybe Discord's Web 2.5, but I don't really, it's not easy to have a Web 3 type thing, which allows you to tell a story and to have engagement with users the way a website does. So a website is still like the best way to do that. It strikes me that that's not going to be the case 2 years from now.
No, I don't think so at all. I think to me, metaverse is going to become like internet. Like, it's going to be a word like that means way more than this thing we're making it out to be. And
it's the information superhighway.
It's going to span. I think it's going to touch everything. It's going to be on digital frames, and it's going to be on a 3D environment. It's going to be on your phone, and it could be on a interactive mirror in your, like.
If that happens, we're going to have to define what it is then.
Yeah, I think to a degree. I don't know. I just think that we're not I think it's going to be more ubiquitous across multiple layers.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this, and I don't think we should spend too much time here. I think we should talk about a metaverse
Yeah,
space, but we talk about this idea of Web3 versus metaverse. Like names matter and definitions matter because they actually do shape the way people think about
true,
things,
true, true.
invest. Uh, but I'm wondering. I've been thinking like Web3 is the thing, but it might actually be the metaverse that it becomes the more important definition about when we talk about these metaverses. And
Yeah, yeah. Well, there may be within your to your point, the metaverse might be the broad term, and then beneath that we have like, oh, here's a metaverse environment or a world, and here's a I don't know. When I think of the metaverse, the things I know for sure is there are things I own, and there's a notion of me as an identity, and those two things exist in the metaverse. We
yeah,
we talk
absolutely.
about a 3D environment, but I think once we have the notion of ownership of digital goods and the notion of identity, and those could be multiple identities, because if wallet is where I hold my identity, pseudonymity, I think was the term I saw someone bring up recently. I got to start crediting people who said this, but this
Hmm.
idea that you could sort of be a little bit disguised, but still have an identity, but you could have multiple. I don't know. I think that stuff is going to be interest to me. Those are the tenets, or those are the things that make the metaverse, that digital ownership aspect and that notion of identity, or something that represents myself. It needs to those things need to exist in an environment somewhere, but the fact that the environment has to be a 3D world and I have to choose which one, that feels limiting right now.
Yeah, absolutely,
But who
absolutely. And I
knows?
think all the metaverses are sort of in a. They feel like they're in a steel cage match or something like that that they have to win. And it's
Yeah.
like that's just that doesn't strike me as the way it's going to be. But I do think, yes, pseudonymity and like a consistent pseudonymity, not anonymity, right? So anonymity is nobody knows who you are. It's not consistent over
Mhm.
time. Pseudonymity is you actually know that you might not know who they are in the real world, but there's some consistency there. It's as if they are a person. So let's
Yeah.
talk about a real metaverse for just a moment. Sandbox, they hit 2 million users, which at first I was like, yeah, that's amazing. But then I'm like, oh, geez, that's like pretty small compared to Snapchat or Xbox or something like that. Um, but yeah, 2 million users. So that's actually really significant, particularly for something that is still running alpha versions of its game. So I'm going to give them
Yep.
props for
Yep.
that. And alpha
Yep.
season 2 is out, and I spent some time running around. I think I collected like 25 of the first items that you need to collect to get. I'm just trying to get through the first couple stages to see what it's like. But I had fun running around in there for a little while. Um, it's you definitely need to work on your avatar because everyone looks the same. But have you had a chance to go in yet?
I've been purposely not doing that because I'm worried about it becoming a
Like,
time suck for me. I'm sitting on a big plot of land that I've been wanting to do something with, and I'm trying to wrap up some other projects before I do that.
yeah, fair.
But I'm gonna have to do this now.
Well, I recommend people like it's free. You just go up, you connect your MetaMask wallet.
Yep.
If you're on it's you should download the client. There's one for Mac and one for Windows. Uh and you just jump in and it's just like, you're in a 3D world, you're running around, you're having a good time. They give you some tasks to do. So, like quests. I think that's what they call them. Maybe they call them something else, but in any event, you can run around. You can see, you get used to it. The user interface is terrible. I mean, like the space is nice, right?
Yes.
From a
Yeah.
voxel based design, they really have done an excellent job,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
so creative. And you run into these different beings or people, and you can
Yeah.
talk to them. You can go to screens, and you can get information. It's spectacular, but this idea of using WASD
Yeah.
and like I think it would be easier with a mouse, but I only have a trackpad. It is really difficult, even after you sort of get used to it. It's it really undermines the user
Yeah.
experience.
Well, it's a gaming audience, right? Or it's aimed at it feels like a game to me. and it
Yeah, oh, yeah.
always, so I've spent a lot of time in the builder and played with the UI and built stuff and done the interactions. And I've always liked the project because you could create so many goal orientated activities for people to do. It was very much felt like building a game in Unity or something like that. But that's also a limiting factor to the point you just raised. Like folks that aren't used to or just don't like navigating a 3D world using a keyboard and mouse, they're sort of stuck, right? So the point you brought up earlier about metaverses battling it out, I think there are going to be ones that are just suited for different types of things. And
But you think like the
different,
keyboard control is not an issue because there's a subset of gamers who are just comfortable with that, or maybe there's some who like that better than other things. I have trouble believing that's the case, but
I think I think it's a problem in terms of bringing in a broader audience. But gamers
you know what we
that
need?
and
We need the old Atari game controller. Now I understand like that sacrifices a lot of functionality from what everybody has the same kind of game controller now. I mean, like, who was originally figured out that form factor? Was it Nintendo? Sony?
Sony was the first one with the dual analog, the two analog sticks.
Okay.
So that, Nintendo came out with the first kind of gamepad, but the first and Nintendo came out with the first analog stick, but it was PlayStation who came up with the two
dual
analog sticks where you could do, one's for turning and one's for, it's like the equivalent of your mouse is one stick and WASD is the other stick.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like
this is like, but that's like a hotly contested. Any gamer watching this is probably shaking their head right now. Like, you old guys, like, you don't need a controller. Like, use the mouse and keyboard. That's how you do it. I'm with you. I prefer to use I actually have connected my game controller to my computer to use it in first person games just because I like the weight and the feedback of a controller. But you can't really compete. Once someone gets good on a mouse and keyboard, they can destroy you if you're using a controller. But
oh, really? Is it that much faster?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I just like
but it's a good point, right? Because
for a long time, so I just never loved it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's. I think you raise a good point, because if you're trying to get someone into the metaverse that is not used to that, it's hard and it's frustrating. But I guess that's
that's why I was bringing up like the game controllers too. If you're not a gamer, you're probably not familiar with that. So that takes a little bit, although it's great once you get used to it. And then that's why I was thinking like the old Atari single stick with a single button. It's like, it's like idiot proof, right? So that's the thing. I really do think that the control interface is problematic, and it's going to really reduce adoption.
It'll be. I think it's geared towards a certain type of audience, right? Like, these are
okay.
But it'll be interesting. Like, so crypto voxels that you can play on a mobile device. How will these all manifest, or what shape and form will, or Somnium?
They're all using some version of the same thing.
Somnium is kind of like what you're describing, because I have it on my head. I can, if I want to look somewhere, I just turn my head and look, because it's a VR environment, right? But
those immersive environments, I don't know. Those aren't for the masses.
Not yet.
Yeah, sure. Like, everything has its time. I just think that's not what we're seeing. Like, even with look at the popular metaverses, like Somnium. I'm sure you've got a headset for those, but the others, they're all you just do on your screen. I think we've been playing with Mozilla Hubs, where you can create your own little metaverse. It's open source. Works perfectly on mobile. Actually, in some ways, I like the mobile version better, because you basically just put your finger on the screen and move around that way.
Yeah, and that may be the, that obviously we know mobile is everyone's got a mobile device now, and
Pretty important.
that might be the way that. What I wonder about is because all this stuff is on the blockchain, will other people come up with, we talked about this before, I think, will other people come up with other ways to represent these worlds? What the layout of land looks like in the sandbox. Can someone else say, hey, here's a two-dimensional top-down version of the sandbox where you can walk around this way?
Isn't that called Treeverse?
Yes. But you know what I mean? Like there's no reason why if you could just recreate that in a different look and feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we'll see. The experimentation over the next couple of years will be really interesting to see what the uptake is. But to me, they need, like, headsets are not going to be the thing that gets mass adoption. I'm struggling to believe that, like, Sandbox is going to, I think, is going to be tremendously successful, and in many ways already has been. But I still don't think it's like mass adoption, like, Snapchat, Twitter. I don't think we get to that scale, right? Certainly not Facebook scale. So I'm trying to think about, is there a metaverse experience that gets that scale, or at least could get to that scale, just because the UI is comfortable enough for people that it doesn't dissuade them from coming back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I have trouble. I think the first iteration is going to be something like, I don't think you can build the whole metaverse and just expect people to come there. Someone has to build a specific set of functionality that we can wrap our heads around. And then once we have that, then we'll either have other people will start doing similar things, or we will be able to get to that Uber place where everyone goes to one world.
I don't think we're ever going to get to it. I think that
I don't either.
Everyone thinks Snow Crash is like, mostly it's people who haven't even read the book that just know that it exists and that it coined the term. But if they were to read it, they would say, hey, there's a lot of things that people are borrowing from today, which are really good mental models for what's coming forward. Ready Player One is sort of the modern version of that. But it doesn't strike me as that's likely how this is going to play out.
No, I think that's where I get back to the ubiquity. Like, I think it'll just move to different areas. You'll transition. It'll be like a multi metaverse. So you'll have,
absolutely. You go between them.
And you might carry stuff to the other world. You might take your sword that you use in Sandbox over to Decentraland or over to Crypto Voxels, and it might look different, or it might do some other thing. But that's the stuff that I think people are going to start.
It'll be a cane
utility around that's going to get super fascinating. Yeah, like if these big AAA titles, if someone, it's not going to be a AAA company because they're going to wall garden it. Some blockchain project that's actually decentralized is going to do a game that is awesome, and people are going to own stuff from that game, and it's going to be a big deal. And some other game, if they were smart, like if this, I can imagine a point where this came out, and if a new version of Fortnite comes out that has NFT guns and you can own them definitively, and there's only 10 of them, and then Call of Duty comes out with a new game that's a competitor, why not offer people with those guns, hey, burn your gun and your Fortnite gun, and we'll give you this. Like, you could start getting these kind of like
that
really
is
interesting.
All right.
Yeah,
we should talk about this again too.
Doing something else. Yeah.
I was thinking that actually maybe Apple could get all these people to play nice together, because they would all have such an incentive, and Apple could be the meta layer, just kind of like the App Store is, and then everyone sort of plays nicely together. But that's a conversation for another time. Skot Leach, we've run long. We have to wrap this up.
Yes, we have.
All right. Everybody, I'm Creatorious Rex. You can find me on the Twitter at Creatorious Rex, or at Brett Kinsella if you prefer. But if you want to do the NFT stuff, the Metaverse stuff, it's going to be C-Rex. And at Skot Leach on the Twitter. Anything else you want to pitch?
I got that token frame back there. Anyone that wants some way to display their NFTs, it's a cool thing. Tokenframe.app. worth checking out.
Actually, maybe next week when we come back, we'll do a little segment on Token Frame and your 1 week or 2 week experience with it.
Cool.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming back once again today. We'll be back next week. In between now and then, check out the Niftorian project and Niftorious.com. Bye-bye.